Hey guys, I'm back with the Great Airport Mystery, and we are on Chapter 5. Warehouse Crash. Clint Hill's footprint, Joe exclaimed. How do you know, Jerry? The head of our company, Mr. Allen, was very fond of Clint, the pilot explained. Shortly before he was lost in a crash at sea, the hangar floor was resurfaced with new concrete. Mr. Allen, perhaps partly in fun, asked Clint to make the prints. I wasn't here at the time, but it's a well-known story around the flight department. The Hardys studied the footprint carefully. They noticed that the instep of the right foot was narrower than that of the left. The policeman, who had to get back to his regular duties, said goodbye. Jerry watched his young detective friends as they continued their study of the prints. I saw something just before I met you fellas that perhaps I should tell you, he said. What's that? Frank asked. A man's arm reached in through the door and placed that board over the prints, Jerry explained. That's funny, Frank commented. Jerry went on. I didn't attach any importance to it at the time. In fact, I had forgotten about it until I saw how interested you were in those prints. Maybe the person is still around. The boys dashed outside the hangar but saw no one. We've heard of Clint Hill a couple of times today, Joe told Jerry, but didn't explain further. After requesting Jerry to keep his eyes open and report to the Hardys any unusual goings on around the hangar, the boys left for home. Both were quiet, pondering over all that had happened during their visit to the hangar. Why had Hill's footprints been covered? Was it to make certain the boys would not see them? And who had reported the presence of two prowlers to the police? Then there was the mechanic, Mike Zim. Had he been the one who had eavesdropped on their conversation? The case, the boys agreed, was becoming even more puzzling. During supper, they related their day's adventures to the family. Mighty queer business, Aunt Gertrude commented. You boys had better watch your step. I don't know what we're coming to when a company's employees can't walk around its private hangar without someone setting the police on them. The boys and their parents smiled. They were used to Aunt Gertrude's outburst. Frank and Joe assured her that they would try to duck any danger. The next morning, Thursday, the boys rose for an early breakfast, eager to start their work at Stanwide Factory. Dressed in light khaki work pants and shirts, and equipped with appetizing lunches prepared by their mother and Aunt Gertrude, they drove off to the plant. Frank and Joe reported to their boss, Art Rodax, exactly on time. Apparently, this was not good enough. I want all new workers in my department to be here 20 minutes early, Rodax growled. Is that a company rule? Joe asked in surprise. It's my rule, Rodax announced angrily. Break it just once and you're out. Then he thrust two large handfuls of work orders at Frank and Joe. You've got 30 minutes to deliver these and get back here, he bellowed. The boys moved quickly and managed to return on time. Rodax appeared to be disappointed. He had underestimated the Hardys' efficiency. To make their task harder, he gave them a number of other chores in addition to their regular duties. That evening, the brothers went to bed immediately after supper, completely exhausted. Their second day on the job did not differ much from the first. Frank and Joe noticed that other employees of the department were given little to do. Good thing the weekend's coming up, Joe grumbled. The way Rodax drives us, he could have had all the Cape Kennedy gantries finished in 2 weeks. What bothers me most, Frank complained, is that we're not getting much of an opportunity to investigate." Yet the boys did not want to report the situation to Mr. Allen. There would be little the executive could do to help, they thought, without arousing suspicion. Monday, the young detectives had an unexpected change in luck. Rodax was assigned for the day to another section of the factory to help supervise the installation of a new duplicating machine. Grateful to have comparative freedom, even if it was just for a short time, the boys divided the work orders and assigned them. "Meet me in the warehouse at lunch hour," said Frank. "We can compare notes then, and at the same time look around the building." "See you there about 12 o'clock, Joe answered as he picked up a bundle of orders and started off on his rounds. Both boys watched carefully for anything suspicious in each department they visited. Not a single clue was uncovered to the mystery of the disappearance of Stan White's platinum components. A few minutes past noon, Frank and Joe greeted each other in the firm's large warehouse. It was divided into two main sections for incoming and outgoing shipments. Stacks of cardboard boxes and wooden crates towered almost to the ceiling. There were also several pieces of heavy machinery stored along one wall in a neat row. The Hardys found a wooden crate and sat down side by side to eat their lunch. They glanced around to make sure there were no other workers about. The only sound was the steady hum of the warehouse's ventilation system. As a precaution, the boys spoke in low voices. "Did you have any luck?" Frank queried. "I didn't come up with a single clue," Joe sighed with disappointment. "I didn't find anything either," Frank confessed. He told Joe he had investigated the handling of shipments from beginning to end, even to checking the bills of lading to see if they had been tampered with. His examination had revealed nothing. "Whoever's running this platinum racket is a slick operator," Joe remarked. Unheard by the boys over the hum of the ventilation system, an overhead hoist was being put into operation. It was only a short distance behind the two young detectives. A heavy piece of machinery was slowly lifted off the floor, then edged to a position directly above Frank and Joe. Suddenly the boys were startled to hear the sharp, metallic snap of a release clutch. This was immediately followed by a deep whirling sound directly above them. Frank and Joe looked up instantly. A massive bulk of metal was plunging towards them. The boys made a frantic leap and went tumbling across the floor. The hurtling object pulverized the crate on which they had been seated and sent splinters of wood and metal in all directions. "That was close," Joe exclaimed. Frank said grimly, "Someone did that on purpose." As the boys scrambled to their feet, a door slammed violently at the far end of the warehouse. The Hardys ran to the door and flung it open. No one was in sight. They hurried outside and were about to search the area when they were confronted by a company guard. "Hold it," he ordered. "What's going on here?" "Did you see anyone run from the warehouse just now?" asked Frank. "No one but you two," the guard retorted. "I thought I heard a loud crash inside the building. What happened?" The boys told him of the incident and added that immediately after the crash they had heard someone fleeing from the building. The guard eyed them with suspicion. "We'd better go inside and take a look." Frank and Joe were annoyed at being delayed, but had no choice in the matter. The man herded them into the warehouse and peered down at the huge, twisted piece of machinery on the floor. It not only had crushed the wooden crate, but it had embedded itself deep in the concrete floor. "What's the big idea of lying about this?" he thundered. You caused this accident, but you're blaming it on someone else." "We had nothing to do with it," Joe protested angrily. "And besides, we might have been killed. We were sitting on that very crate." "Oh, yeah?" the guard sneered. Frank looked hard at the man. "We demand to see Mr. Allen," he said. "The head of the company?" the guard asked. "Fine chance of that. Mr. Allen's a busy man. He wouldn't have time to talk to a couple of kids." "I wouldn't be too sure of that," Joe warned. The guard was bewildered by the demand. He broke into a nervous grin. "We don't have to bother Mr. Allen," he said. "Somebody might lose his job because of this. Besides, this equipment is being discarded. Let's just forget the whole thing." The young detectives did not answer. They left the warehouse and returned to their jobs. "That guard certainly changed his attitude in a hurry when we asked to see Mr. Allen," Joe remarked. "Perhaps he's afraid that he'd lose his own job for not keeping a closer eye on things," Frank suggested. "After what happened, we'd better watch our step around here." After supper that evening, Frank and Joe joined their father in his study. The boys told him about their narrow escape and of their failure to uncover any clues. "I'm sure our real reason for working at Stanwide is suspected," said Frank. Mr. Hardy agreed and added, "As long as you continue to work at Stanwide, the thieves will probably lie low and you won't learn anything. Besides, it's too dangerous for you there. Your close call in the warehouse sounds as if the thieves are already trying desperately to get rid of you." The sleuth advised his son to report to Mr. Allen everything that had happened and then resign their jobs. "Work on the case from the outside," he advised. "I'll arrange to obtain a clearance for you at the airport so you can roam around just like the regular personnel." Frank smiled. "Then we'll have a lot of time to keep a close watch on Stanwide's hangar." Joe nodded. "And also I'd like to investigate the wooded area where we saw Bush Barney. That mystery hasn't been solved." "Good idea," Frank replied. "And let's make our first look an overall one from the air." And that is the end of chapter 5. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.